don't know why we decided to take that drive. It was late, past midnight, and we had just finished hanging out at Jake's place. You know, one of those typical nights when the laughter is dying down, but no one wants to go home yet. So when Jake suggested we hit the road for a midnight drive, we were all in. There was me, Jake, Sarah, and Matt. 4 friends, windows down, music blaring, and the cool night air whipping through the car. There's something about driving at night that feels freeing, like you're the only ones in the world. The roads were empty, the moon hung high in the sky, and the world felt different, peaceful almost. We weren't heading anywhere in particular, just driving. The city lights slowly faded into darkness as we veered onto a more rural road. One of those long stretches of asphalt with nothing but trees on either side. No street lights, no houses, just the sound of the tyres on the pavement and the occasional flicker of the headlights bouncing off the trees. It was Sarah who said it first. Does anyone else feel weird? Like something's off? We all laughed it off. Come on, Sarah, it's just the middle of nowhere. Of course it feels weird, Jake teased from the driver's seat. But the truth is, I felt it too. That nagging sensation at the back of my mind, the kind that crawls up your spine when you know you're somewhere you shouldn't be. The darkness outside seemed too thick, too complete, and the further we went, the more the world outside the car felt wrong. About 20 minutes into the drive, the road seemed to stretch on endlessly. No intersections, no signs, just black trees and the hum of the engine. Jake's upbeat mood started to shift, and I noticed him glancing at the gas meter. We were low, lower than we thought. Maybe we should turn back, I suggested, my voice a little shakier than I intended. The thought of being stuck in the middle of nowhere, miles from the nearest gas station, didn't sit right with me. Jake nodded, but when he tried to turn the car around, that's when we realized something was seriously wrong. The road hadn't been straight after all. It had curved somewhere, or maybe we'd taken a wrong turn without noticing, because now, as Jake tried to head back the way we'd come, nothing looked familiar. It was like we were driving in circles. We should have passed something, a sign, a landmark, anything, but there was nothing, just trees. And it wasn't long before we noticed something else. The headlights weren't reflecting off the trees anymore. At first, it was subtle, but then it became clear. The light wasn't penetrating the darkness like it should. It was as if the shadows were eating the light, absorbing it. We drove slower, Jake gripping the wheel tightly. The mood in the car shifted from playful to tense. "Is this some kind of joke?" Matt asked from the back seat, trying to mask the fear in his voice. "Are we lost?" But the real question wasn't whether we were lost. It was whether we were alone. Then, in the distance, we saw it. A figure, standing at the edge of the road, just barely illuminated by the dimming headlights. At first, it looked like a person, maybe a hitchhiker, but as we got closer, I realized it wasn't right. The figure wasn't moving, wasn't signaling for help, wasn't even looking at us, just standing, unnaturally still. As we passed, I turned to look out the window, and my heart nearly stopped. Its face, if you could call it that, was pale, featureless, almost like a mannequin's. No eyes, no mouth, just a blank face, staring into nothing. My stomach dropped and I turned away, hoping no one else had seen it. But Sarah had. "Did you see that? What the hell was that?" Before any of us could respond, the car lurched violently. Jake cursed, swerving to keep control. I whipped my head forward, and there it was again. That same figure, now standing in the middle of the road, impossibly closer, like it had been waiting for us. Jake slammed the brakes, but we hit it hard. The impact should have thrown the figure to the ground, but when we came to a screeching stop, there was nothing. No body, no damage, no sign of anything. Just the same suffocating darkness around us. "Get out!" Jake stammered, his voice hoarse. "We hit something. We need to check." But none of us wanted to leave the car. None of us wanted to step into that black void surrounding us. The figure hadn't been real. It couldn't have been. But I couldn't shake the image of its blank, empty face. Reluctantly, we all got out, our breaths visible in the cold night air. I held my phone up for light, but the beam barely reached a few feet ahead. The forest seemed to close in around us. Jake circled the car, muttering to himself. No damage, no blood, nothing. "Guys, something's wrong," Sarah whispered. Her voice trembled, and when I looked at her, she was staring back down the road. I followed her gaze and froze. The figure was there again, not on the road this time, but behind the trees, just beyond the reach of the headlights. And it wasn't alone. There were more of them, dozens, maybe hundreds. Pale, faceless figures standing just out of sight, barely illuminated by the light, all facing us, watching. My heart pounded in my chest. "Get in the car, now!" We scrambled back into the car, slamming the doors shut as fast as we could. Jake floored it, the tires screeching as we sped down the road. But no matter how fast we went, no matter how far we thought we'd driven, the figures kept appearing, always just a little ahead, waiting. It felt like we were being toyed with, like we'd entered a place where the rules of reality didn't apply. Panic set in. Jake's hands were shaking on the wheel. Sarah was crying, and I couldn't breathe. We needed to get out. We needed to escape, but the road wouldn't end. And then, out of nowhere, the road did end. We slammed into a dead stop, a wall of trees in front of us. The figures were gone. No more shadows. No more faceless watchers. Just silence. We sat there, breathing heavily, unsure if we had escaped or if we were just waiting for whatever came next. We never found out what happened that night. We never spoke about it again. But sometimes, when I drive at night, I catch a glimpse of a figure on the side of the road, and I never, ever stop.